and you will continue in the following sessions. Hi, Mr. Charles, how are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Hi, Mr. Charles, did you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great.
Who's chairing the sessions? Beverly, Mr. Beverly. Professor Beverly, you chairing the sessions. Your guest is there. Hi, how are you? How are you today? Yes, go ahead and take the floor.
Okay, our first speaker is Charles Ross, and I'm glad to see him here. And yes. He is CEO of the International Business Incubators Association, which is a fantastic organization. I've done a lot of work through it in the past years, and so I wanted to say I'm really looking forward to your presentation today.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Now, you know what? I have some slides, so should I practice bringing those on board?
Yes, you should be able to share screen.
Let's see if I can do that.
Click on share screen.
Right.
Got it. Charles Ross has started. Perfect. Now, why don't you do that to the full screen?
Right. Let's see here.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, it's full screen now. Perfect. And then am I able to advance it? Let's see, maybe I need to click on it. Okay, great. Dr. Anderson, what university are you with? No, I'm not hearing you now. I think you're muted.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I am Professor Emerita at Cal State San Marcos.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay. You aren't screen sharing now.
That's correct. Do you want me to just?
Yes, I want you to go ahead.
Okay, all right, great. We'll do that. Okay, how does that look?
Perfect.
Okay, fantastic.
Go right ahead.
Oh, great. So are we ready to start?
Yes.
All right, well, fantastic. So my name is Charles Ross. I'm president and CEO of the International Business Innovation Association, and it's my pleasure to join the convening. So I guess in my time zone is good morning, but it's probably good afternoon and good evening in other places. I have heard so much great things, so excited about the opportunity to present, heard great things about the particular conference. Last year, unfortunately, I was unable to attend, but many of my colleagues participated in last year's session, and I think there are also speakers in this year's session, Dr. Molnar out of University of Michigan, Dr. O'Neill out of University of Central Florida. And so just so excited about the opportunity to present, but also excited about the work that Dr. Hernati Al-Mubaraki is doing. And she is proud to say that she's an active member of our community of NBIA, and we're always very pleased to support the work of our members. So for today, I wanted to talk about three things. One, wanted to talk about just this moment in time that faces us as communities and as practitioners who are supporting entrepreneurs and the criticality of this moment in time. Secondly, I wanted to highlight, what I think is an important opportunity to advance the work that we're doing in supporting entrepreneurs in our communities and supporting that work and advancing that work through communities of practice. And then thirdly, I want to talk a little bit about the role of MBIA and the role that we play in enabling these communities of practice that ultimately can look to nurture and grow entrepreneurship across the globe. So to provide a little context for my remarks, for those of you who are not familiar with MBIA, let me just provide you just a little bit of an overview. So our acronym stands for the International Business Innovation Association. We oftentimes like to refer to ourselves as a 36-year-old startup. So in 1985 or so, we were founded around this mission of supporting and empowering entrepreneurial support organizations. And we look to do that through nurturing and growing a community of practitioners. And we stand up that community in three major pillars. So one is by connecting practitioners. And so these are basically operators of programmatic entrepreneurial support programs. Oftentimes you might be familiar with individuals who are running incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, entrepreneurship centers. So the first pillar is by connecting those practitioners to the people and resources for them to be successful. We have a global community right now of about 1,000 or so practitioners. Second is through providing training, best-in-class training to those practitioners. Over the past several years, we've trained about 3,000 or so practitioners in our core curriculum around entrepreneurial support. And then lastly is through thought leadership. And that is mostly done through our flagship convenings, to include our largest convening that happens usually in the spring of the year, where we have an international conference on business incubation. And typically, similar to this particular convening, we will have representation from 50 to 60 countries across the globe and through an in-person convening. And that's always an exciting event for us. So I was sharing that I think now is a very important moment in time for us. And so wanted to talk a little bit more about this. And as you think about just what we're doing to support entrepreneurs in our community, and depending on what kind of lens you take to this work, you might have two contrasting phenomena that you're looking at right now in your community. So on the left side, I'm showing you a graph that looks at the past 40 years of entrepreneurship in the United States. That is if you zoom out and taking a look at kind of a decades kind of perspective, you'll see that the general trend there is downward. That entrepreneurship over the past 40 years has been in decline. And while this graph here takes a look at new business starts, you can see that back in the 80s, new firms were making up almost about a third or over a third of the US economy, and now it's down to the high 20%. This phenomena is just not relegated to the United States. So we see it in several countries, to include the United Kingdom, Brazil, Costa Rica. So this is a global phenomena that we're seeing. And then when you take into consideration the impact that these new firms have with job creation, the impact and the decline is even more alarming. But then if you change the lens and you zoom in to what's been going on in the past 18 to 24 months, you take a look at this graph to the right. And again, this graph to the right takes a look at applications for employee identification numbers in the United States, and is really a proxy for new business creation that we've seen in the past couple of months. And while again, this looks at the U.S., this phenomena has been seen in other countries. I know specifically in France and in Japan, and I believe in the UK, we've seen a similar phenomena where going back to about June of 2020, we were seeing record numbers of new application for businesses. And since that time period, that level has been at near record highs and clearly much higher than what has been in the more recent past. So I think that the key message here, though, is as entrepreneurial support practitioners, no matter if your view is on the left or your view is on the right, it still shows the importance of entrepreneurial support in our communities. If you're looking at it from the left standpoint, we need to look at how we can better allow our resources in our communities and entrepreneurs to participate in the process of entrepreneurship and to drive our economy. And then if you look at it from the perspective on the right, there are many more entrepreneurs that are pursuing this process. And we all know what the success rate is for entrepreneurship, especially when you don't have support in place for those entrepreneurs. And so there's a great opportunity to assist those entrepreneurs moving forward. So if you accept my premise that this is a critical point in time for our communities that are looking to leverage entrepreneurship, for the entrepreneurial support practitioners that are supporting entrepreneurs, then I'd like to spend a few moments just talking about highlighting what I think is a great opportunity to advance the work of entrepreneurial support through communities of practice. And when I think of communities of practice, there's this image that makes me think of two thoughts. First of all, looking at this image, I think about as we are bringing programs and models to our communities to support entrepreneurs, there is no reason for us to reinvent the wheel. So there's no reason for us to reinvent the wheel. However, with that said, the other thought that this image generates for me is that one size does not fit all. One size does not fit all. So think about this, applying a community of practice to entrepreneurial support, really looking at how do we pull together a group of people and individuals that have a passion for supporting entrepreneurs, and then how can we learn from each other through regular interactions. And I think this is so important for entrepreneurial support organizations and practitioners. One is because I think independent of our various communities and where we're located, we have so many things in common. So for MBIA, oftentimes we will survey our members, and across communities, we find commonality in some of the top issues. Number one is usually around how do I get funding to the entrepreneurs that I support? Number two issue and concern is usually around how can I be more effective with my programming in the assistance that I'm providing entrepreneurs? And then three is usually around how do I find more resources and funding for my particular program? So given the commonality there, there's no reason why we can't have other practitioners support and share learnings and best practices to folks that are new into the industry or to folks that are looking at revising their model. The other thing I talked about is while there's no need to recreate the wheel, may need some assistance on how do you use that wheel, or how do you apply that wheel, or what size wheel you should use. And that makes me think about the specifically some models that we've seen with, say, business incubation, right? So back in the 80s and 90s, technology business incubators were so much in vogue and popular, and many communities were looking to say, how can I have a technology incubator in my community? And in some cases, those communities had the right resources to leverage a technology incubator. In other cases, they didn't. They didn't have sources of capital. They didn't have sources of innovation. And I think the great thing about communities of practice is it not only helps you identify what are those best practices, but helps provide context on how you can implement those best practices and then adopt them to work in your particular community. So that's why we're so high on communities of practice. From our experience, strong communities of practice have three main attributes associated with them. Three attributes in the area of identity, commitment, and then action. So on the identity side is really just making sure that there is a shared interest. There is a domain that practitioners are passionate about. And then once you have that identity formed, then the next key attribute for the community of practice is around commitment and commitment to sharing and commitment to learning and commitment to engaging with others that are part of the community of practice. And then the last piece that I think is very strong or is very critical in terms of an attribute is around action. And communities of practice are really learning networks that are driven by learning by doing and entering in a cycle where you're learning, you reflect on what you did, you share that with others in your community, and then that starts the learning process anew. So for NBIA, we have been leveraging these principles of strong communities of practice to connect practitioners over the past 35 years. And really when I think about NBIA, I think of not only a community, but I think of several communities that are really kind of these learning networks that are fueled by a living curriculum. And this living curriculum helps not only new practitioners to the space, but experienced practitioners to the space. So just to kind of give you a sense of some of those domains that we look to support at NBIA would include entrepreneurial support organizations that are focused on community-based entrepreneurship, university-based entrepreneurship, that supports technology entrepreneurs, life sciences, ventures. So just kind of gives you a sense of some of those domains that are active in our particular community. And then we look at ways in which we can foster interactions and connections. And so some of these you might be fairly familiar with convenings and conferences. We also have an online platform that facilitates just-in-time access into the network. And then we have even more, I would say, intimate ways in which to connect with other practitioners in a more structured ways. So we have this program that's called our virtual support group that allows for a cohort of practitioners to work together over a period of a year, and they might meet on a monthly basis to exchange best practices. And then these communities are augmented by more traditional forms of knowledge dissemination that will include publications and trainings. So if you're an entrepreneurial support organization and you are looking for community, you're looking to innovate and to learn from others, I encourage you to join a community of practice. And if there is not a community practice that fits your particular domain or is not accessible to you, then I welcome you to join our community at NBIA. It's very easy for you to do that. I've actually have a QR code here where that can just link you directly to our site. And there's many ways in which you can participate in the community, to include participating in our research, our various convenings. Once a year, we look to recognize excellence in entrepreneurial support, and we're always looking for practitioners that are interested to share and to learn and to build. So lastly, I just wanted to just congratulate Dr. Hanani and the sponsors for just an excellent event. And I want to thank all of you that had the time to listen to my remarks, for your time. But I also, more importantly, want to thank you for what you're doing for entrepreneurs in your communities right now. As I mentioned, I think this is a very critical time for us. And again, we encourage you to collaborate with others, join a community. And if you're looking for one, feel free to come over to NBIA. We would love to help and support the work that you're doing. And thank you for your time. And I'm wishing you the best for the rest of the conference.
Well, thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive presentation. I particularly liked your slide with the wheels saying one size doesn't fit all. And
that's right.
Each new business is unique in itself. And so therefore, each one has to adapt to its own environment. Very nicely done. Our next speaker is truly an international person, Professor
Wei Bin Zhang.
Zhang.
Is it me? Yeah.
Zhang.
Can you say me? Yeah, Zhang. Yeah.
Zhang is truly an international person. I was very impressed by his bio. Sweden, Japan, China, all over the world. And you are now at and would you mind pronouncing the first word of your Asia Pacific University?
Li Simei Kan. Li Simei Kan.
Risamekha.
Yeah, Li Simei Kan.
Asia Pacific University, and he is a professor there now. But I wanted to say that he is also the editor of the Encyclopedia of Mathematical Models in Economics, which really impressed me. 2 whole volumes of it. So I am really looking forward to your comments, Dr. Zhang.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your introduction. Here is morning, 2 o'clock. I don't know how to say them. Good morning to you or good afternoon to you. Here is midnight. Okay, can I share my documents? Yeah, PowerPoint. Can I show my PowerPoint?
Yes, put it on full screen. Click on the full screen down here at the bottom. They're good.
Did you get it?
Very good. We can see it.
Okay. It's okay? Okay,
yes,
now
you may go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for the conference organizers, and thank you for giving me these opportunities to present my work. That is many years work actually. It's about the general economic theory. When you hear this name, then you can imagine that it's very general. It's if you study physics, Albert Einstein, that he has general theory in physics. That's what I have tried to do in economics. The grand aim of all science is to discover the greatest number of empirical factors by logical deduction from the smallest number of hypotheses or axioms. Like Einstein said, that's basically my purpose on economics. Actually, this is to do this kind of job. It's not easy. You can easily imagine that so many great economics already there. If you want to do anything unique or new, when I was young, I'm just too brave. And now I reflect back, I was stupid, but too brave and just a great dream. I dream that to create a general economic theory, like 25 years ago when I was a student. Then to connect everything together. That's in economics. Of course, we know it's possible because modern mathematics, especially computers, of course, the generations before me, no one can dream it. No one can dream it even. There's no computer. It's very simple. When you have a very complex problem, computer help you. That's the reason I can dream and I can do it. It's just lucky. Nothing is not, because before me, there's so many great economics, as I mentioned. And today I can only illustrate what I have done without explaining details. But anyway, if you remember that one guy has created a general economic theory, and what that general economic theory means, almost all important economic theories are special cases of that theory. If you remember this one, that is good enough, because all the other works you can easily Google in the internet. That's as I mentioned later on. First, that's I created that when I was young. That's 30 years ago. Created the synergetic economics. Nowadays, it's called nonlinear economics, or more popularly, is called chaos theory. Actually, I can now claim that I'm the father figure of the chaos theory in economics. I'm old enough now, and it's a first book 30 years ago. It's the first book, actually. It's the first book in these topics. That's something I claimed. Please be, I'm a little, you see, perhaps I claim too much, but I have work to show, and you can double check if you don't charge me, because my face is not chargeable. It's Chinese face. Then this is economics. That's Adam Smith. That's everyone know it. That's the father of economics. He basically gave the general you see, equilibrium ideas. Then you have the Ricardo, then comparative advantage. Then everyone studied when you were students. Then just you see, make your memory something. Have you for a long time you didn't, is forgotten. And Marshall's, that's about population dynamics. And now you know the world faces a bigger problem, population. In one side, it was overpopulated. But in Japan and even China, if Americans do not have this large immigrants, all the places face a new problem. That's depopulated. Then in Japan is awful. If this continued 100 years ago, only 100 years, Japan is nobody in the world. It's very, very, you see, dangerous. And Hong Kong, same Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, because their population decrease is even worse than German. Of course, German has immigrants. But anyway, that is an important problem. And Karl Marx, everyone know that's his ideas on capital. Capitalism is perhaps not the real interesting part, but the capital accumulation is very interesting. For sociologists, class struggle is fun, but for economics, capital accumulation is very interesting. Because Karl Marx, what Karl Marx said is that you see, China followed. First, China has go too fast, go to socialism, and China found it's stupid. Then come back to Karl Marx's original idea about capitalism. Then China was successful. The history always bizarre if you look at the story. They follow Karl Marx, but too fast. Have the socialism first. But Karl Marx said that you should have first capitalism, then you have socialism. But China running too fast, then reverse the process. Then now you know what's going on. all the evils, all the progress, as Karl Marx described. Then you have this Warshaw's standard equilibrium. If you are mathematical economics, you'll know his name. Then you have Marshall and von Thunen. Then all these great guys. This is the Schumpeter, of course. This conference is mainly about relate to his ideas. You see, entrepreneurship and innovations and all this one. But in his series, there's no capital, nothing in details. And that's a reason it's not a very general series in that sense. And you have Keynes. Keynes is a kind of enemy of this German mentality. German is the technology, and the British gentleman is mainly good at money and the management, these kind of things. As you know, there's a culture difference as well, but they are interested in quite a different approach, quite a different. But Keynes mainly about money and investment behaviors. Therefore, they are quite different, but very important. Now, after that, you have great mathematics economist, Paul Summerson. When I was young, he was the god of the world. There's no doubt. That's the entire world. His book, his textbooks is in all languages, in all main schools of the world. China, Russian, Japan, and American, of course. That is simply a god. When I was young, it was called God. Now, of course, there's a difference because innovations and the diffusion of knowledge and so on. But that is, then you have Leon Chief, then input-output system. Lowe, that's American hero. And afterwards, all these great Americans, as you know, Europeans no more interesting. Then you have great Americans, Solow, Tobin, Friedman. That's our age should memory the Friedman at least. Tobin not so good in talking, but that's basically that many other theories I will not mention. But if you look at all these traditional theories, one thing is obviously is they cannot explain reality. First, globalization, and also collective learning. This we know this one is so common sense, but they don't know these kind of things. Of course, in their theories, know these kind of things. And goods, capital, people moving together in around the world, and also structure become far more complicated than the world they imagine. That we are the completely different world. And also service, value changes, and population dynamics, all of these kind of issues are so essential, but economics, at least the traditional economics, know little about it. And there's a fundamental change in the rule of time and space. The time and the space, we know that one. Chinese, the Koreans, Americans, and Islam peoples, and so on. We all sit in the same rooms, but we can peacefully, calmly, communicate it. Even communist China scholars, they know what they talk. They may not openly talk, but they laugh in communist parties, all these stupidities and so on, because they know it. It's very simple. You cannot, foolish people. Even in China, communists, all these officials, half of them high position, half of them educated Americans. Almost all of them actually send their children to Americans or Europe. They never send to Japan because Japan is not so good for them. You know what I mean? Therefore, there's a lot of things going on in the world. Even there right now is the conflicts, but 20 years ago, I already predict the conflicts. If you know my logic, it's very easy to see conflict. Even you read the history, it's easy to see it. But people nowadays do not learn history. That's another story. But that is I think I have not much time than the founder of economics. Actually, this is my young time. When I was young, I do this job. Then this is a great physicist. Then chaos theory, the father of chaos theory in physics. And I try to do first job in economics. that's about 30 years ago. Actually, then I do a lot on this kind of nonlinear dynamics. Then more or less is, you know, what is nonlinear dynamics on chaos in modern time. At least you'll hear a lot about it because so many popular books and so on. Therefore, it's not new. But if you're thinking I have done it 30 years ago, that's quite earlier. Then this is about the nonlinear dynamics. That is very important because it's a method. It's not the economics itself. It's just applied modern mathematics and computers to do economics. But that's one thing. If you put all the theories to one framework, oh, that's an awful difficult job because all these kind of basic concepts, you have to learning them, and finally you create a new framework and put them together. Not only that one, you have to explain what they have explained. That's the most difficult job for theoretical economics. You do not easily, you say, or should not deny other great men's job, like Karl Marx. You should not easily deny it. You may hate it, you may love it. That's a different story. It's emotionally, you can do anything. That's no problem. We are modern people, you know what I mean. But you have to figure out the logic behind each series. That need a long time to digest. Moreover, you have to understand the connections between these series. Not only understand the connections, you have to create a new framework to connect them. That's the reason it took me 3 years to create the chaos theory, but 25 years to create this kind of general economic theory. Because this is like my motto when I was this written about 25 years ago. Economist, economize, economics. It sounds simple, but it is more simple things is most difficult to do. That is economize. That economics is. Then this is the first book. Actually, I have the framework already built in about 20 years ago. Already done it, but that is very rough structure book. If even from title, you can see knowledge and values. The Karl Marx book is the capital, and here is not capital, it's knowledge and values. Of course, within this theory, capital is automatically included, and the economic structures like Leon Chief with time and space. But anyway, it's already most important economics already included in these frameworks. But to refine it, even I mean now still in the processes of doing it. I will not go to very techniques, but the basic framework you're learning from the first class in economics. There's a household, firms, resource market, and product markets. Then you have governments, all these kind of things. But what is the firms? How many kind of firms? There are million kind of firms, innovations, government services, and so on. Economics normally have very simple case, only one firm, or two firms, or many firms, but one household. There's also millions of households, as you know. But economic theories, you can analyze these frameworks, but each one has a very simple case. Like Lowe models, he got a Nobel Prize in economics. He considered one household, one firm, one house. If you Lowe model, most of you perhaps you forgot it in details, but you know the name, the Lowe models. That's is one household, one firm. But when you come to 100 household or two classes, even Karl Marx has two classes, and many firms, what will happen? How to model it? These kind of stories. and the market. There's not a perfect competition, not only perfect competition, you have all kinds of markets, these kind of things. Then how to do it mathematically in the one framework? It sounds, you say, a simple job. The question is simple. It's very simple, but technically it's an awfully difficult job, you can imagine. Then I can, you see, I have done it. That's actually is from this first use of very basic principles and a few assumptions about human behavior. Then you will build a very, very complete relations. Like you have music, a few tones, then you build a million music songs and so on. Because each combinations of the principles, you produce many things. As you, most of us are professors, I think it's easily to know what it is, to see what I mean. Therefore, but I do not have so many principles, only few principles about household firms behavior, then explain many, many kind of complex relations. And this is possible mathematically, is possible because we have nonlinear mathematics. That is lucky for me, I born in this time. Because
you have 3 minutes.
Okay, that is control time. That's, thank you. Then this is a simple, then refine the framework by, you see, different, you see, explore different field, economics. As I mentioned, economics is a very huge field. Then I have 20 books for each field. You have regional economics, urban economics. I do all this field as an expert in each field. You can imagine that how it takes me 20 years to finish because you have to work in each field. Otherwise, people will say you are doing a rubbish job. Then each book produce. Then finally, this become I'm afraid I will die because I'm diabetes. I'm a man. A man and diabetes is a risk stage, and I'm aged. All things together, put together, that's it's not joke. Then I thought I rush. I should finish one book at least. What I wanted really to do. Then I really, you see, do it in when the pandemic start. Then I finish it. Then I apply this one to different ideas, different, you see, economics. As I mentioned about China, I have a very popular book now, sells well, The Butterfly Effect in China's Economic Growth. From nonlinear, you see, dynamics and economic theory, I see why is China from the socialist is the poverty to Marxist progressive capitalism. Chinese is forbidden already. It's not allowed to sell in China, but it's become, you see, is one of, it's already called a classical work on China. It's because my theoretical background is so stronger, and I'm concerned with China for so many years. Therefore, there's so many new aspects. It's nothing right or wrong. That is, we are social science. We know what I mean. But at least gave many new perspectives on China's fast growth. Even on American, perhaps some of you may dislike these topics and this title, because the editor asked me to have this title. I have actually a little more soft title called American, the Great and its Self-Destruction. Of course, for us, self-destruction is not so bad because Schumpeter tell you. But for some, it sounds so bad, but actually I'm quite positive to American. The content is very, you see,
I'm sorry, but you've run out of time at this point.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, I finished.
I think your ideas are wonderful. I have studied economics a few years even before you. And I remember that all of the theories were saying all else being equal. What I gather is you're trying to say all else is not equal and incorporate them into your theories.
That's right? Exactly. Yeah, you are exactly right. And
I understood. Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Zhang.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very interesting.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And our final speaker in this session is Trent Simmons. And Trent has a title that I had never heard before, and I found it fascinating. He is the world's first purpose, wealth, happiness coach. So I think this is a very interesting title. And the title of his presentation today is Integrating Impact into Startup DNA. And I hope you're here.
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, you're up in the corner. I will turn the screen over to you, and you can share screen and put up your slides or your PowerPoint. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you. I am as well. I apologize in advance. I didn't have a ton of time to prepare for this. I'm supposed to be on vacation in the US right now, and I'm an American living in Switzerland, and this is our first trip to the US in 2 years that has turned into a work vacation. But I'm happy to be here and share our thoughts. I imagine that given the overall theme of this conference, that we're a bit of the outlier, but I think that's also healthy to have those different perspectives. So very quickly, I'll give everybody the background on our organization and then launch into this topic of integrating impact into for-profit startups. So first of all, can everybody see my screen okay?
Why don't you put it on full screen, put your slides on full screen?
Where am I going to do that? Using a new setup here, and I'm not seeing the full screen option. Stop sharing for a second and start again. Nope, not the one. Yeah, I'm not seeing the option.
Okay, that's all right.
Should I just go for it? Okay.
Go for it.
All right. Excellent. So first of all, our organization, we were formed to help individuals and organizations take personal accountability for their impact on the world. In addition to our nonprofit work, we also offer an array of business services, with the proceeds going to fund our nonprofit projects and expand our network. We are a registered NGO in the US and soon to be in Switzerland, as well as several other countries. But we're a very unconventional organization. We have four main pillars. One is an international network for national chapters of our organization. Second is a global impact coaching coalition, which, as I mentioned, helps to fund the nonprofit work, as well as directly influencing corporations, startups, and universities. Our third pillar is an impact network of disruptors of dysfunctional systems, which acts as a nexus point to bring together innovative thinkers from the worlds of nonprofit, for-profit, academia, government, and media. And fourth is a social movement that is kind of based on the philosophy that there's a lot of people in the world who don't like the way things are going, but do not feel empowered as an individual to make a difference in society, whether it's as a conscious consumer, a conscious employee, or as a business owner who wants to have a positive impact on society through their business. So really, that's what the social movement is all about, is bringing together all of those people from all over the world, regardless of race, religion, or socioeconomic background, or any other difference, focusing on the similarities and creating a new definition of winning so that we have that internal framework to make the tough choices that we're all going to have to make to turn the world around, as well as the external framework of being part of a global community of like-minded individuals who are all trying to live their life in that same way. So to the topic at hand. So this is kind of what we bring. One of the things that's unique about what we bring to the table in terms of our coaching and consulting for businesses is that we do have that network, that when somebody has an idea for how to have some type of social impact with their business, but they don't know how to move forward, odds are we know somebody in the world who's already done something similar to that. and can help them to take an idea and turn it into a full-fledged initiative. We're continually adding to that playbook and continually expanding that network. So this is our kind of one of our core offerings for established companies is we can come in and do a social impact platform assessment where we are not going to only tell you how good you're doing with your current projects. We can tell you how good your ideas are if you're even working on the right areas. And now typically when you talk to a startup about impact, you get the response, we don't know yet if our business will be profitable and we need every penny we can to increase our odds. So we'll worry about having a positive impact on society once we are financially secure. That makes sense. I was a serial entrepreneur before I got into the nonprofit world. I fully understand that. I wasn't very rarely thinking about how I could have a positive impact on society. I was just worried about getting my business off the ground. So as I mentioned here, that makes sense, at least it did in yesterday's marketplace. However, we're entering a new marketplace where consumers are growing more and more conscious of social environmental issues, and they're also gaining more access to data, and even through social media for all of its ills, it does provide that benefit of making it much harder for companies to greenwash. So if you're a company that's out there just trying to pretend to do some good in society in order to attract consumers or employers or employees, then it's going to be a lot easier for people to see through that. So this is really this kind of this wave that we're seeing of conscious consumers who want to purchase their products or goods or services or whatever the case may be from a company who actually is walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And any type of startup that doesn't have a strong social impact platform as part of their core offering is going to face a competitive disadvantage, because now you're basically just saying to consumers, buy our mousetrap because it's better or it's cheaper or you know me personally or any of those things. So really you're kind of going into battle with one arm tied behind your back if you're not figuring out a way to make social impact part of your unique selling point for your product. Make people care about who you are and why you're doing it. And they will be not just your consumers, they will be your clients. They will become a loyal following. That's how you create brand ambassadors of people who are excited to tell their friends and neighbors about the product they just bought, not because of the product itself, but because of the company behind that. So this is a lot of the work that we're engaged in, is actually helping startups and fully fledged companies also. We have programs all the way up to corporations, all the way down to one-person startups. So it's really across the gamut of helping the business people rewire their brain to think about how they can use their business, their network, and their lifetime of experience to have a positive impact on society without hurting the bottom line. That's another thing that's very common is if you don't know what you're doing, typically you're going to just end up kind of spending money on a social impact platform, and you might not be able to take full advantage of that in terms of marketing it to people. So I'll get into that a little bit more, but really this is our niche, what we call creative impact. So we define this within the terms of sustainability equals do less harm. Sorry, that slide is backwards. Impact equals sustainability is do less harm. Impact being do more good. Creative impact is the art of doing more good without just spending more money. And we really heavily emphasize what we call the halo effect, which is the unique ecosystem that surrounds every individual and every company as to how they can engage all of their stakeholders in this process. Again, if you're not getting your suppliers to think the same way, if you're not getting your consumers to think the same way, there's a lot of supply chain topics going on right now. People aren't thinking about how they can positively influence their customers to also think more sustainably and more impactful. And then you have the rest of your ecosystem, which can involve your competitors. So one of the most common examples we use for creative impact in a negative light, say you have a furniture store owner whose sister gets cancer. So she decides that she's going to raise money for cancer awareness through her furniture store. That's fine. That's great. She has a platform. She's using it. It's much better than nothing. The problem or the issue becomes a snowball effect. That, yes, she might be able to get out and go get some of her other furniture store owners around to do something similar. But once you have that second degree, you lose that personal connection of people caring about that topic because they know the furniture store. So you really start to lose a lot of that momentum. Whereas, for example, if that same owner was focused on sustainable tree farming, that's something they can directly support with their business. That's something they can directly get their competitors to participate in. That's a way that they can actually have an impact on their entire industry, whether that's local, regional, national, or global. If you're picking the right ideas for your social impact platform and tying it in to your business network and your personal network, you have that potential to go out and create a positive snowball effect. Another example, just from one of our first clients for this, small businesses, tea shop in India. They were doing well. They wanted to expand. They had several people around the world that are interested in franchising, and they didn't really know how to kind of make sure that the positive social impact of their business was multiplied as they went into the franchise. So we just sat down with them, and after a couple of hours, we came up with the idea of that they have right now a franchise fee of $25,000 and 7% of the revenue. We said, well, why don't you just make the franchise fee $100,000, but 75,000 of it is payable with social impact. And what that would look like is each person who wants to buy a franchise of that tea shop would have to submit basically a second business plan that lines out how they plan to have a positive impact on society through that tea shop. And then you essentially create a board of directors from the existing franchise owners who get to choose if they want to let that person into their network. If they want that person and that idea to be associated with their brand. And the value of that is that you also start to get better ideas. So somebody might just have the rough ideas and they talk to somebody who's just been through that process a year or two before. They can help them turn that raw idea into a polished idea, make these connections. We also can get involved in that using our network to make these ideas even better, even more impactful, again, without just spending more money. So this is really the kind of this breakthrough that we're trying to convey to entrepreneurs as well as corporations and SMEs. Is social impact doesn't have to be a negative item on your balance sheet. It actually can be a way that you can positively increase your marketability. So another example was one of our other early clients was a tourism company. And we actually didn't have really much to offer them on the impact side because they were started specifically to take tour groups to wildlife areas where they were protecting endangered wildlife. And every trip raised funds for that conservation area. So from the very beginning, they had a great platform. What we were able to do is come back and help them again through our network to expand that, but also really talk to them about their marketing and how they were building a sense of community around that. They weren't thinking of their customers as community. So as a result, very few of them were coming back. They weren't being brand ambassadors. So just through the simple idea of having a holiday party that brings together all the people in an area or even online, and people can share their slides from other trips, you start to build that up. You get repeat business, but you also get the sense of community of people that want to talk about the trip they took, not necessarily just because of the trip itself, but because of the company behind it, because of the other people they met who went on similar trips. And now you've got these people going out there and doing marketing for you for free, who already paid you for your service and are more likely to come back and use your service again. So there's a lot more that we can go into on that, but really, I wanted to just kind of keep moving forward. And this is, our process for the impact platform development is, an expanded interview with the founders. We want to find out what you're already trying to do, what you're personally passionate about, because this is also that element. In many ways, we're very scientific about, hey, let's pick the causes that make sense based on your industry. But let's also, make sure that there is that personal blend still in there, because that's what you're going to be passionate about. That's what you're going to work those extra hours on. It's not going to feel like work, because now you're not just doing this to make money. You're doing this to make money and have a positive impact on society. And when you reach that sweet spot of waking up every day thinking about how you can use your business to do good in the world, you don't need expensive vacations, long time taking a break from all of that stress. Work becomes fun. It becomes something you're looking forward to. Your first thought of that day is generally a positive one. You still have the crises, you still have the management, you still have all those things of running a business, but that's not like your primary focus anymore. That's those things that you get through as quick as you can, so that now you can get onto your purpose in life. And this is really what we just want to convey. I mean, we don't have much of a presence in the Middle East yet, but we're definitely looking for additional contacts there. We're looking for coaches, consultants who can help us to spread the message about this, but also get trained to work with us. We have a lot of university programs, so Spirit of the Game clubs that will take these ideas and teach those to high school students, for example, or just run programs themselves within the university. And we're also building like I said, a global network of NGO partners. And then finally is just the social movement of people who want to think.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll go ahead and wrap up. And our most recent offering is a brand new business network called the Impactful Business Network that we're launching in Europe later this month, and in the US early next year. We're looking for coordinators in other areas of the world. And it's just a business networking club unlike anything else, because it is specifically for owners who want to use their business to have a positive impact on society. And you get to spend time with other people who are thinking the same way, as well as getting access to our coaches and our network to help you along that path. So yeah, that's obviously, as you can see, there's quite a bit more here to that, but yeah, as I said, we've run out of time. Just want to finish with this final slide, that we want to be very clear that we do not engage in nor facilitate greenwashing, and at any point in our work we conclude that that's the primary goal of our client, we will address that immediately. And if they do not come to the table and basically say, okay, yeah, you're right, or you're explain the misunderstanding, we will drop them. We are not in this just to make money. We are in this to have a positive impact on the world. And yes, we do orient ourselves somewhat as a for-profit company, but simply so we can raise as much money as we can for our nonprofit work.
Well, thank you very much, Trent. Very interesting. It sounds to me like your whole goal is to how to capitalize on social identity. In other words, doing good. What you're doing good and take advantage of it.
Yeah, we want to help the people who are already doing good to be more profitable, and we want to help the companies that don't know how to do more good to do that.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've had 3 very interesting presentations, and I want to thank the 3 presenters, and I would also like to thank Hanade for having this conference, putting it together, bringing all these people with these various ideas together. So she's done an excellent job today. So thank you, presenters, and thank you, Hanade. And I'm going to turn it over to the next chair, who I believe is, let's see, Dan. And you are there. It's all yours.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Anderson. I really appreciate it. So I hope everyone's having a great morning so far. It's been a great series of presentations. Thanks, Trent, for that wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed that. So, and I'd like to thank all the event organizers. This is such a great international event to be participating in. And I know that we all appreciate all the hard work that goes into making something like this happen. So I get the honor to introduce a colleague that I have known off and on, because I haven't seen him in quite a while in person, probably 10 years, is Jeff Finkel. Jeff, I think we first met probably back in 1988 or 89. I think you were in charge of the Council for Urban Economic Development back in the day. So I think that's when I first met you. And then you've since taken leadership when that organization merged to become the International Economic Development Council. So, and I've had the pleasure of participating in a number of your conferences, both in Washington, D.C., as well as elsewhere in the United States. So you bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise and experience. So we're very, very happy to have you with us today. And then another thing that many people may not know is, Jeff, I think you're coming up on your retirement soon, aren't you? So I congratulate you on your upcoming retirement. So let me turn the program over to you, Jeff.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. I've got to determine what the word retirement means. I have never experienced that before, so we're going to have to just determine, does that mean that I'm still in the field of economic development in some way, or am I going to be playing golf all the time? And I doubt it's the latter, and we'll have to see how much of the former it is. And Dan, it's great to see you today. I am thinking all things California right now, because we are going to have our leadership conference down in the Coachella Valley. Is that what we call it? And in late January, early February. So we're looking forward to being in California again. It's been some time.
Well, it'd be good to have you back out here.
Well, and maybe we can get you to sneak down and say hello and share a drink or two because I will retire effectively at the end of that week. So this will be clearly my last hurrah.
Well, if I can get you up here, I'm up in Monterey and Pebble Beach, so please come up here and we'll visit.
I love Monterey and Pebble Beach. Well, people didn't tune in to listen to me talk about retirement, so let me get my share screen on here and see if I can get my presentation going, and there we go. And I trust that that is a full screen, which our previous moderator was encouraging everybody to do.
Yep.
Does that look that way?
Yes.
So, and the thing that I've been asked to talk about today, and Dan, you would actually probably even be a better person to be visiting about this, is the whole issue of entrepreneurship. And economic development is it has a number of legs to it. When I describe economic development, I describe it as having three principal functions, and that's the attraction of business, the retention of an existing businesses, and then supporting entrepreneurship. Unfortunately, and particularly here in the States and maybe in other places as well, economic development oftentimes gets thought of by the media, elected officials, is if you haven't attracted a business, a marketing campaign and a groundbreaking or a ribbon cutting, it's not considered economic development. And clearly, that is the sexy part of some of economic development. If you're trying to recruit a Mercedes-Benz, a BMW, an Amazon HQ2, which went on here in the States a couple of years ago, and Canada and Mexico, it's not economic development in some people's minds. But at the end of the day, many communities can create just as many, if not far more, jobs from retaining their existing businesses and help them grow and through entrepreneurship. IEDC has gotten more involved in entrepreneurship. We have created an entrepreneurship-led economic development certification, so that economic developers who want to learn more and then have a good housekeeping seal of approval around what they are doing can go through a number of courses at IEDC and end up with a certification. So some of those things I'm going to be visiting about today. For those people who do not know anything about the International Economic Development Council, We are a nonprofit membership association. In many countries in the world, there are associations of doctors, lawyers, engineers. Well, you know, in some places, in many industrialized countries, there are associations of economic development professionals. And we took two of them, as Dan mentioned, merged them together 20 years ago. And we call it the International Economic Development Council. We are bold enough to call it international because we do have a number of international members. We have a number of international attendees, particularly at our annual conference. We typically convene WIPO, the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies, URADA, EDAC of Canada, EDANS of New Zealand, Hong Kong, Economic Developers of Australia, and a variety of other international associations of economic developers come to our annual conference. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit about entrepreneurship and economic development strategies to support entrepreneurship and fostering e-led as we are coming more to talk about it. Our membership, we have over 5,000 members. In the slide or the square on the right is the types of people that tend to be members. When we say educational institutions, many of our universities in the States do one of two things, not all of them. They teach economic development, or they have technical units within the universities that can provide technical assistance and other support for their regions or their economies. I actually am a fellow at my alma mater, Ohio University, and they in fact have they both teach economic development, and they are a important part of southeastern Ohio, which is a somewhat rural, somewhat poverty-stricken area, and they provide a fair amount of support for economic development efforts in that region. In my opinion, all associations do roughly the same thing, and that's what you see on the right-hand side here is the services that we provide. What is the difference between us and other associations? It's the content. We have people on the staff who know a lot about economic development, and our members and our leadership are all economic developers. And so, but if you went to another associations in engineering or nursing or chiropractic, they might have these same services, but teaching the areas of expertise that they have. Here are some of the international partners that I was talking about. The funny thing about IEDC is the best that we can tell, we are the largest economic development membership organization in the world. I've always said if China decided to have one, they would eclipse us in a heartbeat. But at this point, we still provide a great deal of economic development education. And we have certified programs in South Africa. We help the Australians create their certification, et cetera. As we all know, and the whole world has experienced a significant economic topsy-turvy over the last several months. We're almost, 18, 19, 20 months with the COVID. One of the things that we've seen here in the States is a real need to focus on workforce development, entrepreneurship, infrastructure, and economic inclusion. And those have been some of the big issues that have been a real problem here in the States. Globally, there are nearly 500 million entrepreneurs. Half of that are female. And here in the States, there are 31 million small businesses, and half of those are owned by minorities, African American, Asian, Pacific Islanders, Latinos would be our largest, or the categories that would most fall into that. Entrepreneurs are engines for local growth and innovation. But I will say that during this downturn because of COVID, we have lost tens of thousands of small businesses, and we're now trying to figure out how do we bring back some of those businesses that may have gone out of businesses. How do we retool some of those entrepreneurs to be to focus in a new area? But we also were seeing a growth in entrepreneurship because many people got laid off. Anytime there's a downturn in the economy in this country, we typically, part of the way we come out of those downturns is we see a lot of people have been tinkering in their basements, in their garages, in their attics, and trying to figure out how they grow their own job through entrepreneurship. And that clearly has been going on during this downturn, and that will be a part of helping for our economy to recover. I talked about the three kind of legs of economic development. They are located in this next slide. There's a large history of economic developers supporting and encouraging entrepreneurship. There was the industrial recruitment early in the 20th century, developing entrepreneurship strategies. There was a professor at MIT who measured the growth of entrepreneurs, and he showed very successful communities and entrepreneurs, gazelles. We had the cluster-based or cluster-focused development in the 1990s, and we call them entrepreneurial ecosystems today. The economic evolution of economic development, we oftentimes work on reducing cost, the 1930s industrial recruitment, but the problem with that model is you might be able to move a company from New York City to Alabama, but that company is so cost driven. Their next jump may be to Mexico, and their next jump after that may be to a Asian country where the price of labor and regulations is even much less. We had entrepreneurial strategies in 1980s, not the 1908s. And we were supporting individual small business owners through space funding and marketing opportunities. The 1990s, as I mentioned a little bit ago, was cluster-based development, and then what we call today entrepreneurship ecosystems. Economic developers may not have been thought of in this ecosystem development, but frankly, we're an essential part of it. One, oftentimes economic developers are affiliated with local governments or state governments. And we are instrumental in the permit processing, licensure side of things. We oftentimes help control incubator space, maybe have financial tools, grants, loans that can be supportive. And unlike much of the entrepreneurship ecosystem, we tend to have a steady flow of support, both private sector led or government led support for economic developers. So that's part of the reason the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City came to IEDC a few years back to ask us to create this certification and to do a better job of training economic developers in the economic development space, because there is such a rich and strong foundation for the economic development agencies that do exist already in the country. In this slide, and by the way, I will give our organizers a copy of this presentation so that they can share it with everybody if they choose. But what we have here is a closer look at the ecosystem players. This was created by one of our training partners, SourceLink out of Kansas City, and they have put together how the various entities that are involved in entrepreneurship work together, or how they play in this thing called an ecosystem. As I indicated a few minutes ago, economic developers are providing a fair amount of support in this economic development or entrepreneurship space. Oftentimes, communities have either technical assistance providers, or they have people on their staff that can provide technical assistance. Sometimes it's training, sometimes it's legal advice, sometimes it's financial advice, marketing, meeting government requirements. Oftentimes it can facilitate technology transfer. I will share you a quick story where the state of Delaware, when they gave an incentive to a major company in Delaware, one of the things they asked for in exchange were patents that the company wasn't using that they might be able to transfer to local entrepreneurs. And they did that as a way of a quid pro quo. Reducing barriers such as regulations. We know that Great Britain created enterprise zones a great number of years ago to provide a deregulated environment in certain neighborhoods of poverty. That has been something that has been tried here in the States. Investing in infrastructure in low income areas, or providing final mile broadband are other things. We've also, many of our communities support local space, incubation accelerators, opening foreign trade zones as a way of supporting entrepreneurs. You know, one of the things that we know is there are a lot of places and communities worldwide where quality of place is not very high. And what we've discovered is if we can improve the quality of place, we can bring more entrepreneurs there, and we can also bring more buyers to those places. So a lot of communities have place-based strategies to try to support entrepreneurship. There's also the whole notion of economic gardening, which is a term that came out of Colorado, where we grow from within in a community. We clearly, entrepreneurship is also two other key issues in this space are the whole issue of talent. And I don't know how everybody else is doing in this particular time, but we are discovering, at least in a number of places in the States, Canada, that there is a real talent gap, and entrepreneurs are having to struggle with this issue as much as anybody. But being a part of a startup that has the chance of growing does attract some talent, and it attracts people who want to be part of something that could potentially take off. And it also promotes innovation. So many economic developers are aiming for business-friendly climates so that they can provide competitive incentives to entrepreneurs. We're trying to provide inclusive and secure locations for these entrepreneurs. We're trying to develop a digital infrastructure or broadband that allows companies to grow in place, or grow in places where we haven't provided good broadband in the past, and offer amenities for the creative class, which is a term made popular by a professor out of the University of Toronto now, Richard Florida. Kansas City is clearly a great home for entrepreneurship. The Kauffman Foundation is located there. If you look at many of the companies that have grown there, that many of them are entrepreneurs. Hallmark Company, which many of you may know is a greeting card company, well, it's still headed up by some of the Hall family. And you know, MCI was a phone company that grew up there and is merged a couple different times, and but it is still there in one form or another. So it is clearly a community that doesn't certainly does its fair share of attraction-focused economic development, but they like to think of them as a home for entrepreneurs and a place where entrepreneurs can grow successfully. Economic gardening was a program that originated in Littleton, Colorado, and excuse me, it's a grassroots initiative to grow jobs through entrepreneurial activity and market expansion. Littleton did almost no attraction-focused activities. What they did is they helped their existing entrepreneurs grow. They provided customized research. They helped target second stage companies that were already operating in their community. And it was a very successful strategy. And frankly, a lot of us in the economic development space refer to stickiness. Frankly, if you recruit a company, that company may stay for a while, but they've also shown they have a propensity to leaving. They may well leave you at some point when their lease runs out. But if you help a local entrepreneur grow, they may be more sticky than attraction-focused companies that you might have worked with, who may graduated from the local high school. They may have all of their family in town, and they're going to be there over the long haul. So there is a second foundation that exists in Michigan called the Edward Lowe Foundation, and they've worked with a number of organizations as well. And I know for certain that the Edward Lowe Foundation worked with the Grow Florida initiative, and Grow Florida focuses on those in the region that are created by these stage 2 companies. Stage 1 companies, often many of them will stay stage 1 companies. This will be a 1 or 2 or 3 person family operation. They may have a cleaning business, they maybe have a landscaping businesses, but there are other companies. There are other companies that will grow, and they will become
quick, 1 minute warning. So.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So those are a number of other types of companies that we work with. So as I indicated early, IEDC has created this entrepreneurship development professional certification, and we are going to be rolling that out, and hopefully we'll be able to roll it out internationally in the near future. Frankly, that is about all I have to share today, Dan, other than these 2 new courses that were also developed, and there'll be more courses coming after this. I do want to thank you for having me here today, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Jeff. And hey, I want to give a shameless plug out to you. One of the programs that you created while at IEDC is the Bollinger Foundation, which is a foundation that supports the family members of those in the field of economic development, community development, and housing. Many people in that field may not have incredible benefits because they work for very small nonprofits. And so you created a foundation called the Bollinger Foundation, which I put the link in the chat box if people want to go out and look at it. And it's a great opportunity. What it is, well, Jeff, why don't you give a 30-second?
Well, frankly, economic development, community development, assisted housing do not have funds where if somebody dies unexpectedly and their children need support to go to on to additional schooling, we can help in those circumstances. We don't have a ton of money, but we've helped. We've supported many families. We've given out over $1 million in scholarships, and we hope to continue to do that.
Great. Again, thank you very much, Jeff. And I look forward to connecting in the future. Don't be a stranger after retirement.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jeff. Thank you.
It's good to see you too. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, for our next speaker, we have Ishmael Radwan, who comes to us from the World Bank. Are you here this morning? Oh, there you are.
I'm here, but it's not morning at my end. It's 8:30 in the evening, so good morning, good evening to everybody.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening then for everyone around the world. So, and you're the leading public sector specialist for Europe and Central Asia for the World Bank. So welcome.
No longer. That was a previous job, but I'm now lead economist for the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries.
Great.
So thank you very much for having me. And it's a great pleasure to be here. Let me thank Dr. Hanadi for the invitation and wonderful efforts that she made in organizing the conference. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here. Let me try and get the slides up for you.
Thanks, Ismail, for accepting our invitation and you be part of our conference.
Thank you. No, it's an honor to be with you. So do you see the slides on the full screen?
Yes. Yeah, we do see it full screen.
Wonderful. All right. So let me go quickly through these ones. I've been asked to speak about innovation, technology, and the entrepreneurship ecosystem. I just want to start with a couple of quick definitions on innovation and knowledge. Knowledge is the know-how when you actually have the skill to do something. And innovation comes when you take that skill and you transform it into a new product or a process that can be commercialized, or a service that meets the market need. And this is really important. So I put up here a slide that compares Kuwait with Korea. Kuwait, we all know, is a high-income country that has huge reserves of oil. Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world, certainly in the 1970s, and is now equal in terms of GDP per capita to Kuwait. So this is really important. Innovation matters. It matters for all of our Gulf countries, because we're looking at the future of what will happen when we move away from oil and we diversify the economy. You hear a lot about the fourth industrial revolution. I just want to make sure that everybody gets on the same page. The first industrial revolution was in 1784 with the steam engine. The second one about 100 years later with electricity. The third one came with the power of computing in the 1970s. And now we are in the fourth industrial revolution, and that's what I'm going to talk about, the impact of artificial intelligence, big data, robotics, and more. I believe that there are 5 big technologies that are going to drive the future and it's going to change our lives in every aspect. And the 5 technologies are DNA sequencing and bioengineering. The second one is energy capture, storage, and transmission. The third is robotics. The fourth is artificial intelligence. And the last one is fintech, financial technologies, and blockchain technologies. So I'm going to talk about all of those in my presentation tonight. Now, the reason this is becoming more and more important is because of the power of computers. You all know Moore's law. The power of computing and the size of computing doubles every 2 years, and the size halves every 2 years. And in fact, it's become even quicker than that, sometimes every 18 months. So what does that mean in practice? Well, on the left-hand side, we see IBM's disk drive, 5 megabytes from 1956. And there were just 3 or 4 of these around in the world. And you can see the kind of efforts that were needed to move them around. On the right-hand side, you see a tool that's infinitely more powerful, costs about $35, fits in your pocket, holds 1 terabyte of information. They say that if cars had progressed as fast as computers, we'd buy a Rolls Royce for 50 cents, we'd fit 20 of them on the head of a pin, they travel at 10 times the speed of sound. But unfortunately, of course, cars haven't quite progressed to the same extent as computers have. But this is what is driving innovation and technology in the modern world. We used to this is basically the amount of information that's going online all the time. It's increasing exponentially. So these are the Facebook connections around the world. We know in other websites, YouTube, there's roughly 750,000 hours of content being put up every single day, and it's increasing rapidly as well. So this is really what's making a lot of the innovations that we see in the world possible. It's the amount of information that's being stored, the amount that's being uploaded all the time. So this is a big area. I told you this one of the big 5: energy capture and storage. On the left-hand side, you see the cost of the lithium-ion battery, and you see how they've come down to very, very low levels, low enough to make the lithium-ion battery competitive with the combustion engine. And going forward, it will be the power source of choice. On the right-hand side, you see the price of solar voltaic cells. You can see it's coming down again very rapidly. The scale is a logarithmic scale, so that can give you a sense of how cheap solar energy has become. I think very recently in Saudi Arabia, we saw record low prices for solar energy, less than 10.4 cents per kilowatt hour, which is roughly 1/10 as cheap as the cheapest coal-fired electricity. So these are the energy systems that will power the future. On the left-hand side, you see how the lithium-ion battery is driving electric vehicle sales, mostly in the US and in China, and you can see that exponential growth once again. On the right-hand side, again, the same with solar energy consumption, US and China leading the way, other countries growing exponentially, albeit from a small base. But of course, we're all feeling the impacts of COP26 as well. And so we know that this is going to happen sooner rather than later. And for all the countries that I work in the Gulf, these are all heavily dependent on oil and will be trying to make the transition to a low carbon economy and less dependence on the oil economy. As the previous oil minister in Saudi Arabia said, the Stone Age didn't finish because they ran out of stones. And the oil age is not going to finish because we run out of oil. It will happen much quicker than we think. It will happen because we have cheaper, cleaner, more efficient technologies that's going to drive energy needs in our societies. The second area I want to highlight is innovations in biotechnology. And here I want to just highlight a couple of big innovations that are coming through. And one is the genome editing. Yeah, let me just come to this one. Because on the right-hand side, you can see the cost of genome sequencing, which used to be $100 million to sequence the genome. And now we can do it for a couple $100. And many of you have probably gone online and used Ancestry.com or 23andme.com to maybe find out where you came from, where your ancestors came from. Yeah, that's probably a widespread use, but we're going to have more and more biological uses. The thing is, when these prices come down to this level, what we see is demand goes up incredibly high. So last year, all the genome sequencing took place last year was more than all the combined genome sequencing that's ever taken place throughout the history of this technology. So you can see that once the cost comes down, the demand goes up, and the amount of information that's available for medical discoveries goes up exponentially. So we're going to see these new technologies being used to develop all sorts of biological solutions. We're already seeing people being cured of leukemia. I think if you want to check the literature on that, you can see the New England School of Journal of Medicine from June 2021 has an article on that. They are looking to cure childhood blindness it was already being cured in non-human primates, and so it's only going to be a short space of time before we move to human trials, and we will be able to eradicate childhood blindness and many other genetic diseases. We'll be able to go in there, snip out the gene that's not working and replace it with one that is. So one other thing I want to highlight very quickly on this one, especially for our economies in the region, is this idea on the top right-hand corner that we're going to be able to use metabolic engineering to synthetically produce many of the things that we used to produce from oil derivatives. So we're not going to be depending on fossil fuels for plastics and other downstream chemicals. We're going to be able to produce them synthetically and biologically, and that will also have a great impact and implications for our economies in the region. The next area I want to share with you is the growing amount of robotics that's taking place internationally. And I think you can see on the graph, the numbers are fairly small, probably, but the US is still the leader, China coming up very quickly. If you can see in the growth rates that a lot of countries, especially in Asia, countries like India and Thailand are growing very quickly. We see the compound annual growth rates, which will mean that they will be very much in the forefront of robotics in the future. And what's happening with these robotics is that they're being increasingly introduced into manufacturing. And the impact that that's having is that a lot of manufacturing is now not being offshored to poor countries anymore, but it's being nearshored to rich countries. Instead of using high-cost labor, they're using increasing amounts of robotics. And that's creating tremendous tension and many rich countries as we look for other opportunities for employment who were displaced from industrial sectors that were previously dominant. Artificial intelligence, I could talk a lot about this, but of course you know a lot more about it than I do. I just want to give you this one example just to show you how all of these technologies are converging. So we move very quickly from when I was a kid. On the left-hand side, our American audience is going to recognize David Hasselhoff, Knight Rider. That was obviously fiction, but now the driving car is not the future, it's actually our present reality. So driverless car is very much a thing of the present. And, you know, this is the issue is, and I think Tesla is probably in the vanguard of this, but also Google, and now increasingly European and Asian competitors are catching up quickly. So one of the questions is always, is Tesla a car company or is it actually a software company? You know? We've got the battery technology converging with AI and converging with big data and much faster computational power. So all of these things are coming together in ways that we couldn't have foreseen until very recently. The fifth area that I want to do innovative technologies is fintech. Of course, we've heard a lot about Bitcoin. Probably many of you have been probably investing in Bitcoin and watching it go up and down wildly. But of course, there's plenty of other financial technologies that's built on the blockchain technology that's underlying it. This is allowing us to do all sorts of things, especially with payment systems, cross-border payments. If you've got kids, they probably use Venmo for payments. This is making a lot of things much easier, not just for consumers, but also for businesses, online businesses. You now have lots of different options and basically mimic many of the functions that were reserved for very big companies in earlier times. Some of the issues that this is raising for us as a society are the ethics around AI data privacy, and all of those topics. We had an interesting discussion last week on some of these topics in terms of what would happen if a self-driving car actually kills somebody. It does happen. I think 1 or 2 people have been killed by self-driving cars. Who is then responsible? You know, is it the car? Is the car a legal entity? Can we blame the car? Can we punish the car? Is it the car manufacturer? Is it the software provider? All of these topics, and many, many more topics that we're going to throw up with these new technologies, and we will need to think very carefully through those to ensure that we develop in a way that's actually beneficial for society. I'm sure you'll have lots of examples of your own. Now, this next slide is really about how much of the world has become dominated by these new technologies. If you look on the left-hand side, that's the value of assets on the S&P 500 in the 1970s. Most of it was bricks and mortar, tangible assets, buildings, inventory, land, and very little, 17% was the intangibles, the brand value, those kinds of things. You look at 2020, 90% of that is now intangible assets. The software, the patterns, the data. Data is the new oil in the Middle East. Information is the new oil. That's where we really need to focus going forward. So in terms of how do we use all of these issues, how do we group them together into an entrepreneurship ecosystem, I think you need these 4 elements. Educated and skilled labor force, need to have a good business climate, need to have an effective innovation system, and an adequate information infrastructure. I want to focus on this effective innovation system just a little bit. So this is what I call the innovation function. These are the things that go in and how they have outcomes and then the impact on the right-hand side. And if you look at the things that go into creating an innovation ecosystem, of course you need the technology, equipment, R&D, really important. Human capital, you need to have the skilled labor, and training, software, databases, all of those things will eventually lead to further growth, productivity growth, and economic diversification. So one or two highlights. I don't want to highlight way too much, but I know that Dr. Hanabi is there, and the invitation is something great. I often compare Kuwait and Korea. You can see Korea at the top there in terms of R&D. Kuwait is still struggling to invest more in R&D, and you can see the general trend in terms of GDP per capita and increased R&D. Here is another one that looks at where we could be in terms of boosting human capital. This is something that the World Bank is working on, really taking a look at the education systems in the countries in which we work, how to make them more entrepreneurial, how to make the curriculum more entrepreneurial, how to make it more relevant in terms of today's technologies and future technologies. And I think this is a debate that we're having, an ongoing effort on our part and on the part of many governments. So I just want to leave you with a couple of ideas in terms of what we could do to create the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So one of the things is how we attract talent, right? So we really need to do a good job of trying to make the countries that we work in as attractive as possible for people who have skills and ideas and who are innovative. And I think it's very, very impressive when you hear that more than 50% of Silicon Valley startups have one or more immigrants as a key founder. You often hear all sorts of things about immigrants, about migrants. We never hear this, right? And I give you the example of the Biotech started out by 2 Turkish immigrants to Germany, produced the Pfizer vaccine. But there's many, many more examples of that sort. I think it needs an open culture. And this is one of the things that we struggle with in the Middle East. an open culture, to accept open data, to accept failure as part of the learning process. And one of the things that we often hear from successful entrepreneurs is how many times they failed before they finally succeeded. I think that's also important. Until very recently, we didn't even have an insolvency regime in the Middle East. And in many countries in the Gulf, insolvency was actually illegal. So I think these things are starting to change. We're starting to understand that in order to have success, you also have to accept. Capital, of course, the business environment. We're playing, I think our countries in the Middle East are doing the most they can and really changing very rapidly to create a better business environment. And that's going to pay off dividends in the future. I talked quite a lot about the education system. I think I was really surprised to see Estonia supporting a program to teach coding in youngsters starting from 7 years old. Certainly when I was in university in the 1980s, there were no computers at all. So it's interesting for me to watch my kids who are finishing university now and to see how much they're doing in terms of my boys are both engineers, to see how much they're doing in terms of coding and artificial intelligence, app development, all sorts of things. We need to bring that to the curriculum very, very early on. We need to increase the focus on science, technology, and mathematics in these countries. Another thing I think that we can do more of is actually partner with universities. It's been shown that ideas that start at universities are 100 times more likely to be listed on a stock exchange than those that start outside of the university. So that's one of the things that Stanford University does really, really well. They take all sorts of people with ideas outside of business school. They give them a 3-month course, teaches them entrepreneurship, marketing, business development, and it gives them a network of experts and investors who can mentor them and see through those startups to a level of maturity that they can then be listed or sold on later on. I think the other things I'll talk about, let me just finish with this one on diversity. I think this is one of the things that we struggle with diversity. We also struggle with diversity in venture capital. So most venture capitalists are from a single background, mostly male. And I think this also has an implication on who they fund. There is, of course, this kind of stereotype of the young white guy in the hoodie, the only guy who can do technology. The Zuckerbergs, Bezos, and Elon Musk of the world. I think there's a lot more talent out there we can tap. I think there's a lot of studies that show where there's more gender diversity in the management of the companies, and those who are able to secure capital, the more successful the enterprise is. So that's it for my presentation today, and let me thank the organizers once again for the opportunity. Thank you very much, and back to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. That was perfect. So I really, really enjoyed all the information that you had to share. So thank you again. So we had a question from the audience. Someone asked a question about getting a certificate of attendance. Oh, you're muted. Where's that button? Find it?
Dan, it's now your time.
What's that?
This is your presentation now.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go ahead, but I just want to make sure we address that question. So you will make a certificate of attendance available if someone requests it?
And all the chat or attendee, they can reach us through Hoover.
Great. And just to confirm that you can see my slides?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, got to look for the nodding head on the screen. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share with you information about the program. I represent an organization called the Educational Association of University Centers. It's a specific program here within the United States developed by the Economic Development Administration, which is a program within the Department of Commerce. So the program was started back in the 1970s and has since evolved to have at least one university center in each of the United States as well as US territories. So in my presentation this morning, I'm going to go over some of the impacts that COVID's had on some of the regional economies, both short and long term. Talk about some of the new markets opportunities that have been created, and focusing a little bit on resilience. Resilience is one of the toughest subjects to bring up because unless there's a crisis, nobody wants to talk about it. I'll specifically go into some specifics about the University Center program and then how the university centers have responded in the face of COVID. So first of all, we all know and have experienced over 20 months of the stress that's been created by COVID, both the sheltering in place orders. We're severely impacted right now, at least in the United States, and we're seeing it elsewhere, of the supply chain impacts, and that is only going to probably become worse over the holidays. The impact of the lack of broadband. Communities that have broadband don't see any problems at all, but it's the rural communities and those places that just do not have broadband capability. What's been great has been the shift in some of the employers' acceptance of remote work. We've all seen how it's become very acceptable, and in fact, it will become a long-term trend for remote work to be a norm. I know of several people, including my son's fiance, who has negotiated a contract, and she will work remotely in perpetuity for her whole current career. So sadly, the COVID has not impacted everyone equally. It's impacted the service economy particularly hard. And then you'll see any sector, tourism, hospitality, transportation in terms of airlines, et cetera, have all been severely impacted, both in terms of the health as well as economically. And there's been a much lower impact of COVID on the knowledge workers in terms of the people who can work remotely. However, even those households have been impacted by the need to either provide homeschooling, an environment where people can provide a room or at least a computer for their kids to get education. But all it takes is a household with 3 or 4 kids that have to attend different classes to know that it's not very sustainable long term. And then then the next impact has been on the care of elderly family members, because you're needing to take care of elderly family members because many of the service care operators are not currently open. And then what all of this has created, especially the lockdown and the working in isolation, has been the lack of interactions in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We've heard throughout this conference about the importance of the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the interactions that occur between folks in different parts of the economy, both in finance and marketing and services, et cetera. So, and what we've seen is that there's been a slowdown in the entrepreneurial ecosystem interactions as a result of COVID. There aren't as many opportunities to connect, and the virtual connections just haven't filled the gap as well. We've known, and Bill Gates was quoted a year ago as saying that we would see a drop in business travel 50% post-COVID world, and we've already seen that to be the case. There's definitely been discussion in the investment world, folks investing in airlines who know that business travel underwrites a great deal of the cost of running an airline, and they know that business travel will not go back up to the pre-COVID levels, and that includes not just airlines, but obviously hotels. Downtown San Francisco, for example, is dramatically impacted by the decrease in travelers for business not staying in local hotels. The increase in teleworkers, the supply chain contractions. There was a report that just came out a little bit ago, I think it was earlier this month, that airlines expect the long-term reduction in air travel to be at least 15 to 25%. So And then obviously there's the impact on the real estate shifts in terms of people moving out of larger cities if they can and moving into rural locations if services are available in terms of broadband and other. So at the same time, the COVID has created a boom in opportunities. So there have been thousands and thousands of companies. In fact, I work at a university where we have an innovation and entrepreneurship program, and we have no dearth of students with all sorts of ideas on how technology can help people adapt to the COVID environment. We have a program at our university called Get Virtual, which all it is students from a variety of fields who help businesses, restaurants primarily, move their operations online. So now they can do all online ordering, all online processing of their orders, and e-commerce. So it's been a great program that's run by students who are simply looking for ways to develop new careers. At the same time, we've seen platforms like Zoom and others taking off. And in particular, there's been a takeoff in conferences with the platforms that create a virtual reality kind of sphere. And we'll see, as we've seen from Mark Zuckerberg in his renaming Facebook as the metaverse, we will see more and more of a push to people to exist in this virtual universe. And so they'll see that metaverse, that virtual presence becoming more important. And if you want an example of just how all-encompassing it can be, is you can look at the world of Nike. Nike is developing virtual tennis shoes for the virtual environment so that people can buy a virtual Nike pair of shoes for their virtual character in the virtual sphere, so, or the metaverse. So one of the things we've learned here in the United States is that teaching resilience is very, very difficult. I've run a program here in California to support small businesses called the SBDC program. And one of the things we had a very tough time in teaching resilience. We find that it's just not a very attractive topic to bring up. We would put on workshops on how to prepare for wildfires or how to prepare for earthquakes or floods, but nobody wants to attend these events. It's not a very exciting topic, and moreover, it doesn't contribute to the bottom line immediately. However, we would get great attendance in the days and weeks following an earthquake. So how do you train for that field is a challenge for anyone in the private sector or those people that want to at least work in that sphere. The other thing we know is that this is not the very first pandemic, that there have been pandemics before, and this one, in terms of mortality, has been actually fairly low compared to some of the others. So we know that, for example, that influenza, this current pandemic nation or worldwide has only resulted, I shouldn't say only, but has resulted in 50 million deaths. The influenza outbreak in the early part of the last century resulted in over 50 million deaths. So it's a huge, huge change in the impact of this pandemic versus previous ones. So I'm going to shift gears just because I have to look at time here. So in the United States, we have a variety of programs that focus on economic development. The U.S. Department of Agriculture created the Rural Development Administration, which focuses on helping agricultural communities get assistance. In small business, the Small Business Administration has at least 3 very substantial programs, actually a 4th one, Minority Business Assistance Centers. The Housing and Urban Development has community resilience programs. Within the Department of Commerce, as I mentioned earlier, they have the Economic Development Administration's University Center program. So what do universities do? Well, universities work in the whole sphere of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Universities work in the area of finance, they work in the area of infrastructure, human capital in particular, but policies, and in helping people develop new technologies. The Association of Public and Land Grant Universities, along with the University Economic Development Association, came up with a paradigm of looking at universities and economic development to focus on 3 core areas. The first area is in talent, developing talent for today and for tomorrow, focused on what are the needs of the next workforce. The other is research and creative problem solving, innovation. So, and then finally, last but not least, is place. The interaction of a physical environment with the entrepreneur and the innovation that's trying to take place. And you might recall that some of our previous speakers have spoken to this, the importance of having an environment that is open, that is welcoming, that is accepting of change. So University Center program is created, provides the expertise, off the campus. So in other words, university center programs typically provide technical assistance in the area of workforce training, applied research, technology commercialization, and studies to help companies, local companies, adapt and to the new environment. As I mentioned earlier, there are university centers across the country in the United States. Specifically, some programs that we work on are innovation and rural entrepreneurship programs, supporting commercialization of new ideas. For example, I'm in Central California, so we're looking at commercialization of the use of drones in agriculture, because agriculture is very vital here in the state, is how do we best use drone technology to improve agricultural practices. Making a favorable business climate. One of the things that the university centers often do is provide business counseling or proof of concept support, as well as working in the development of industry clusters. So university centers have evolved. We obviously last year had the CARES Act funding, which really supported a number of innovative programs. Now we have the Build Back Better funding, which is really emphasizing a lot of infrastructure development. And right now, the big push here in the United States has been under development of broadband and how do we expand broadband access. So, and then finally, last but not least, is adapting to climate change. We know that climate change is occurring. We know that industries and communities need to adapt and change to support it. So one of the programs that we work on, for example, is ag crop adaptation. So we know that the droughts are occurring more frequently. We know that temperatures are changing. What we've seen here, for example, in California, is that the wine industry is starting to push their grape vines further and further up in elevation to find cooler and cooler microclimates to be able to grow the same grapes. So a topic that has not come up, or what has come up lately, is fuel reduction. Those of you may know, here in California, there was a community of 26,000, the town of Paradise, that was completely destroyed. Almost every single home was lost. And so now there's a big push within California to reduce fuels in the forest floor, especially around urban interface. And finally, a topic which has not come up, but I say this because the ocean is less than a mile away from my current location where I live, is that urban planning for ocean surface rise. We know that the encroachment of the ocean is coming. The question is, how will the communities across the world adapt to that? So, and the university centers are trying to look at this. So moving forward, and this is Joby Aviation's aircraft that they're currently developing. It's an air taxi service that can take 4 to 6 people. We're focusing on economic renewal. We're focusing on resilience of the communities, and finally adaptation. And I try to explain what I do to my family, and in terms of economic development, it's hard to explain that to your daughter when she's young, but it's the less focus on training for things like old technologies around the combustion engine. I remember my father teaching me everything I needed to know about changing the oil on my car, or doing other things related to keeping the vehicle going. Now it has to be much more a focus on the new and the change, electronic vehicles and drones and autonomous technology. And then finally, last but not least, it's also more focused on alternative energy generation and storage. Again, we're seeing both generation of energy is changing, but we're also saying that the need to store energy because it cannot be transported over long distances. And in California, we actually have power outages on a regular basis. Having power storage at a local level is very, very important. So with that, I'm out of time, and I thank you very, very, very much for allowing me to share this information with you this morning.